I have one more body of work that I'm actually in the midst of right now. I call this the 60-year project. And it is because I turned 60 recently. And that was a huge shock to me. Because the pandemic came, my friend Karen was telling me that she was going to be turning 60 in a few months, and that if she couldn't get the vaccination prior to that, she'd be able to get it as a 60-year-old. And I hung up the phone thinking, oh, poor Karen, she's going to be 60. And then I thought to myself, what am I talking about? I'm turning 60 too. So it really kind of shook me. And I started to think about how can I reflect on my life? I think our lives, we live day to day, but the concept of them is quite abstract in a way. And the idea of time is quite abstract. And so I decided to go through my family archive of photographs. My parents are no longer living, but my siblings are. And I ended up with a bunch of photographs that my mom held on to. And I decided to try to pick an image for every year of my life. And the idea was that I could step back and maybe understand what my life was looking like in 60 years, like what stood out, where were the resonances. And it was quite a process, very emotional, the good times and a lot of challenging times as well. So I just wanted to use this as an example of the process that I came to. So I started with an original photograph for all the pictures, and then I decided to make a digital drawing of it. So this is done with Adobe Illustrator. I did a body of work called Holding, Not Having, and I've thought before about the idea of impermanence and sort of what's left behind, what we leave behind, what's felt when we're no longer here. And I guess I was trying to get to that a little bit. So I wanted to kind of take out a lot of the details. I always had in mind that there would be another step. And I went through a series of trials. I wasn't sure what it would be. And I ended up taking the image back into the dark room. And this is an image you can't really tell so much from this, but it's a tintype. A friend of mine who's an expert in historical processes and photography, she gave me a lesson. So this is known as wet plate printing. And probably a lot of people have seen tintypes around. This is what a tintype looks like. So basically you pour the chemistry on the plate, and while it's still wet, you drop it into a bath of silver, and then you take it out, and while it's still wet, you expose the image and process it, and it ends up on a piece of tin. And I felt like just this idea of going back to this historical process brought me to where I wanted to be with the images. There's lots of irregularities in the images, which you can see here, which I really was happy to embrace. I've drawn 45 of the 60 images, and I haven't selected all the rest yet. And then I've made about maybe 16 tintypes up till now. So what I ended up doing was scanning the tintype again and having the images printed larger, because the tintypes are 5x7. So that's the final print. This was me at 9, dancing with my best friend, Danny. And this is my earliest that I know of self-portrait. When my sister went off to college as early as possible, as quickly as possible, she was 17. I got to move into her big room that had a waterbed and its own bathroom. And it had this fabulous wallpaper. And that's my first camera, which was an Olympus OM10 that my father bought me. This was my one and only boyfriend. He was a mechanic, and he bought these 2 Oldsmobiles. And I got to drive that car to the University of Miami, 45 minutes every day to go to school. So I also pulled not only from my family archive, but also from my own personal archive, which, because I take photos, were of friends and lovers, and also my artwork. So this was taken from a Polaroid, and I was 22, and I made the Polaroid for my first girlfriend. I decorated myself as a Christmas tree. I don't know why, because she's Jewish too. And it was taken out on a balcony where I lived in Florida. I hung tinsel and balls and everything. And I have to confess that when we broke up, I took the Polaroid, but I told her she could have it back if she wants it. She actually, by mistake, she invited me to join her on a road trip to take photographs. She was a writer and was writing a story in Miami and was driving across the state, and asked if I'd want to go with her and take some pictures. And that's actually was the beginning of my thinking of doing photography. I took some photos for her and I really liked it. And that's when I ended up staying at the University of Miami. I started to collect cameras. So this is a self-portrait of me. I had a Stetson hat I loved. This is kind of jumping ahead, 33. So this is taken from my artwork. I was with this person, Penny, for 16 years. And I took a series of photographs of us. So I guess you could see the holding coming back. And it was from a body of work called A Finding Peace. And this is me and my mother in Nice. And my mom really wanted to take me to the south of France. So this was actually 2 years before she died, a very memorable moment. I did a series of self-portraits. I took one every day for 8 months. And part of it was just trying to embrace who I am, my body at this point in life, and just really kind of see myself without shame, a bit of celebration. I think the last 2 years have been really challenging for many of us. And I know for me, I was worried I wouldn't have work, but as it turns out, I've had more work, more teaching. So that's been really hard. I've been a little bit in a just survival mode. I want to share my explorations and maybe offer an entry into a space to consider things or a new point of view. To be honest, my art making is very personal in terms of I'm doing it first and foremost for myself. And then there's the hope that it transcends and, people can feel something from it or think something from it. But I don't make it with a specific intention for somebody else. I would tell somebody in terms of their life. I think you just have to follow your heart, in all aspects. And also, I would recommend connecting with people who are supportive or are also creative people. We talk the same language, even if it's a different medium. So I think having people in your life who are pursuing their own creative explorations is very helpful.
Thank you for joining us for the Orange County Arts Council virtual studio visit. This program is made possible by donations from people like you. 50% of donations go directly to the artists featured and 50% to the Orange County Arts Council programs. Please consider donating today. You can donate by going to ocartscouncil.org. The Arts Council's virtual studio visits are presented in partnership with the Newburgh Free Library and are made possible in part by NISCA,